The format for this meeting is an interview with an alcoholic, the hot seat. Inside the alcoholic studio, a speaker will be asked a series of questions that range from their personal story, the steps, relationship with God, and carrying the message. There are no right answers, just a fun and interesting way to share the speaker's personal insight. Our speaker for tonight is Marvin P. Timekeeper, please allow 90 seconds per question. The meeting may run slightly longer. Members, please feel free to leave if needed. Speaker, please say done when you have finished your answers, or please say pass on questions you would prefer to skip. Are you ready, Marvin P?
Yes, sir.
Let's begin. Please generally describe, in your own words, our basic text, the book Alcoholics Anonymous.
The Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the program to show others precisely how we recovered is the main purpose of the book. So it's kind of like in meetings when you hear Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women. I disagree with that. Alcoholics Anonymous is a book, and hopefully the fellowship of men and women have done the program right out of the book. And then they can share their experience, strength, and hope with each other. So what I look for in the book or at with the book is once I gained knowledge of how the original people went through the steps, I gained the basic understanding of how that operates. Done.
Are you an alcoholic? And if so, what personally makes you an alcoholic?
Yes, I am, and I cannot control the amount that I consume once I take a drink, despite the negative consequences. And then the mental malady is that second part, and there's been many times in my experience in which after a period of sobriety, I think that I could drink like normal men. Done.
What does the concept of anonymity mean to you?
Press, radio, and films. Done.
Please give us a brief sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit.
I've only stopped. I've never quit. What did it look like? Growing up when I would, it wasn't alcoholic drinking right in the beginning. It kind of progressed up until then. Growing up, I live in a little community up in Placerville, and so it would be like going to basketball games and football games. And after that, we would go out and drink. And I found myself sitting there with a red Solo cup after a lot of people were passed out. I mean, I was still consuming, I was drinking to get drunk. And sometimes I found I couldn't. It progressed like that on throughout the years. I mean, the few days before I turned 21, I got the DUI, rolled the car. And that doesn't make me an alcoholic. Those are just the consequences that came from it. But over and over and repeated, people wanted to help me. People wanted to reach out to me. People saw the problem long before I did myself. And I didn't recognize it. I figured I could do it on my own. And it wasn't until, 2004 when El Dorado County Sheriffs came and kicked in my door and told me that the business I was running was illegal in the state of California. I wanted to stop long before that, but now was an opportunity to stop. So that's when I went into treatment. Oh.
Alcoholism is described in the book as a fatal illness. What does that mean to you?
For me to drink is to die. Done.
What are the conditions of your mind and body that accompany your alcoholism?
That accompany my alcohol in use or...
Whatever you want to do with that question is fine by me.
Well, when I'm drinking, I'm great, man. All those promises come true. I'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. I don't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I got something to tell you. It's when I stop drinking that the restless, irritable, and discontent comes in. So the only thing I can say with that is I believe alcoholism is there. The alcoholism is stopped when we stop taking the drug in, but now we have the ism, and it's that mental malady. So by working the steps and doing three sides of the triangle, doing the recovery, the unity, and the service, that's where that recovered comes in. And no longer am I suffering from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So I think that answers that. Done.
In your understanding, what is the role of a sponsor? Do you have a sponsor, and how often are you in contact?
I do have a sponsor. I'm not in touch with him as much as I should be, or as much as I'd like to be. How about that? But I have a support group of men that are around me that I'm in contact with on a regular basis. And the role of the sponsor is to present an adequate presentation of the big book to the sponsee, lead them to God, and get the hell out of the way. Done.
How have your sponsorship needs changed from early sobriety until now?
My sponsorship needs, as far as me to my sponsor, in the beginning it was for him to guide me through the steps and lead me, help navigate through those. Once I have kind of found out how to do that through sponsoring and book studies and exploring myself, my sponsorship needs are to continue to work the steps with him, get a different perspective. I usually do that twice a year. But what I found in 14 years is that support group of people. Now I have a lot of 10-step buddies that I will, write out that 4-step, get together with whoever's available, somebody that I can trust, and that has expanded. So there's like 4 or 5 of those that I can go to at any time and run that by, get that different perspective. So I'm not as reliant on the sponsor as before, but we're more bounce stuff off each other, spiritual guides for each other. Done.
Have you completed the 12 steps? And if so, what is your suggested time frame for completing the steps of AA?
Yes, I've completed them, and rapidly. If you want to look at it, you can go back to Spiritual Experience in the back of the book, and it says, within a few months, others have seen in us what we could not see in ourselves. So that was the suggested timeline. I kind of like what they were doing in Cleveland, like 5 2-hour sessions if possible, but as rapidly as possible depending on the sponsee and how much time and effort they put into it. Done.
In your own words, please describe steps 1, 2, and 3.
Step 1, that I have an allergy, and if I touch that, it will set off the reaction. Second part of step 1, that I have a mental malady that takes me back to thinking that I can drink like normal people. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. It's not in that this power can restore me to sanity, can help change my thinking. And then step 3, I really like it, to turn my will and my life, my thinking and my actions over to this power greater than myself. And in that, in the beginning, step 3 was, I was searching for that, for this outside entity to begin to talk to me. And what I've come to believe is that, God is in us. And so by running some of my thinking by other people, that God will speak through them. And if I humble myself enough to listen, and to turn my thinking and my actions, so maybe to interrupt my thought and possibly to interrupt my actions, I get a different result in my life.
What does your unmanageability and self-will look like?
Unmanageable. Well, when you talk about the steps, the unmanageability would be to go back to the thinking that I could drink like normal people. But, you take the alcohol and the obsession and the craving away, and there's still unmanageability in life around some actions and stuff like that. So I love when it says that we are striving for spiritual or progress rather than spiritual perfection, because as I continue to work the steps, stay spiritually fit, my behaviors continue to change. So I think the unmanageability is continues. I think life is unmanageable because I can't control it, and that's the biggest thing. Is today I know that the difference between me and God is He knows He's not me. And I've got to remember that I've got to turn it over to Him in all areas of my life. And sometimes that's been difficult.
What is your concept of a power greater than yourself, and how are you turning your will and your life over to it?
The power greater than myself is energy. Everything is made up of it. You got a proton, a neutron, and an electron, and it's everywhere. So that's it. That other big book says, "Do not give me a name or a place to worship me. I am in everyone and everywhere." And in our big book, it says, "Deep down inside of every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God." So I tend not to look up. I tend to look out. Because I believe that if I can work on my spiritual fitness and align myself with God's will, then it turns out. And today it's kind of a trip because there is like a sixth sense in my gut, in my feelings, in my emotions, to where to know the difference between right and wrong. And I don't know right or wrong, working or not working, but I still look at it as when I'm in life, when I make an error or when there's something not going the way that I want, rather than looking at it as a stumbling block today, it can be a stepping stone. So, done.
Please briefly describe your experience with steps 4 and 5.
In the beginning, they were hell because a lot of people didn't know what the hell was in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was around a lot of half measures people that were giving me lots of opinions. And then once I was shown where it's at in the big book on 64, made a list of people with whom we're angry with, and then make that list and move on to why we were angry and make that, column. And then we asked ourselves why we were angry and making that column. And then on the bottom of page 66, that set aside prayer, that's basically a forgiveness prayer, turning that into first person. And then for me, I was shown to do a 5-column inventory, which the 4th column, which would be my mistakes, and then the 5th column, which would be my defects of character. And by using that, it shortens out that 5th step. I really love the 4th step today. I think the more I've done it, the more it just becomes a natural working part. With the 5th step, there was a lot of relief in telling another human being, what was going on. But for me, I found I had a disease of perception, that some of my things I was angry at, some of my belief systems were fancied. It wasn't true at all until I ran that by another person and got a different perspective. And that helped me to let go of years of delusion. Done.
What does the exact nature of our wrongs mean to you?
To gain a different perception. I think for a lot of times I would look at my part. I probably doused that thing. My part in things rather than my mistakes. So when I would look at something that happened between me and somebody else, I would justify my actions in it. And so by taking them out entirely and looking for my mistakes, I can look for where selfish, self-seeking, frightened, dishonest come in, and hopefully get that perspective. And the more I do it, I think, and over years, there's been stuff that keeps showing up on my 4th step. And as I continue to do it, on some of them I narrowed them down I've narrowed them down with God's help, and my sponsor and the support group have narrowed them down to the exact nature, looking at it. And a lot of that is fear for me. Done.
Please briefly describe, in your own words, steps 6 and 7.
Step 6, letting go of the shortcomings, letting go of the past that I have no control over. These are things that I've done, and they're the learning process that I had to go through. So it's kind of letting that go. And in step 7, I love step 7, when take away our character defects which stand in the way. So not all of my character defects are bad. Some of them are assets at times. And in looking at that, how do I align myself more with God's will? And that's what I really look at in 6 and 7 is getting back to God.
What are some of your character defects, and are they being removed?
Oh, I'm selfish, self-seeking, frightened, inconsiderate, and dishonest. Are they being removed? Tempered. At times I can still be selfish. At times I can still be self-seeking. At time, I think they're more tempered than totally removed, because I think in different situations, anything has a yin and a yang, and it could be an asset as much as a liability.
Please briefly describe steps 8 and 9.
Well, step 8, if you want to read it in the book, it says we turn back to the list in which we already made. So if I did a proper 4-step, all I need to do is go back to that 4-step inventory and look at it. And 9 is going out and repairing the damage we've done in the past. And I loved when I learned what an amends was. Instead of saying I'm sorry to somebody, to go out. And if I've done that proper 4-step, it's all right there. My character defects and my shortcomings, whatever my shortcoming that I did to you, then I can go, when I did this, I was selfish. When I did this, I was self-seeking. When this happened, I was frightened. When this happened, I was dishonest. The one thing I really like about doing the 9th step is, I ask a couple other questions. Is there anything that I have left out? So I can hopefully get a clean slate with that person. And what is it that I need to do, or can I do to make this right? And then I throw in something a little different. Is there anything you need to say to me? Because sometimes what I found, especially in relationships, is those people need to, or you have that opportunity to get what's on their chest off. And so when that amends is done, there is that common ground. So that's the one thing I found with 9 and 8.
Why is it important for you to straighten out your past?
So I quit beating myself up. I think step 9 was the most relieving step, because for me to make right. There was some people that I had done harm to, and I would see them and I would feel that guilt and shame. And some of them I went and made amends to, and they didn't even know I did anything wrong to them. But I felt that. And in straightening out my past is, you hear people say a living amends, and I really don't know about that, but, practice these principles in all our affairs to attempt to walk a different way of life. So I think straightening out our past is getting even, so I can walk from there with that clean slate. Done.
When you were actively drinking, did you drink whiskey in your milk?
It didn't matter. No, I didn't drink whiskey. Well, I guess so. I guess a mudslide. Would that be whiskey in your milk? But I did make Jägermeister milkshakes, so I guess, yeah. So, done.
Please briefly describe your experience with steps 10 and 11.
As we go through the day, we make amends promptly where we can. And I think it's really important to write a written inventory at night. It says we constructively review our day. So when I construct something, I put pen to paper. And to ask myself those questions, which are basically doing another 4-step at night. I love the part where it says we do not drift into morbid reflection. Sometimes that's more easily said than done. And then what I do with that inventory in the morning is that's what I begin to meditate on is, if I was selfish, to be selfless, and begin to look at how I can be a better person during that day. And I really don't pop the book and review the 24 hours a day ahead. Between pages 83 and 88 are 12 prayers and meditations that I focus on. And anywhere in the book between 83 and 88, it says we ask. That's a prayer. And then I will usually try to pick up a piece of literature, whether that's 24 hours a day or daily reflections, whatever that happens to be, and read that. And I've got a little place on my back porch with a little Buddha and a hummingbird feeder and a bird feeder. And then I just kind of sit quietly, because my meditation to quiet my mind is difficult. But I find I just kind of appreciate what's around me.
Well, I know you just answered it a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate. What does meditation mean to you, and how do you practice it?
In different ways. In the beginning, a lot of people were giving me a lot of opinions on that quiet your mind, and I had a very difficult time with that. I got a Captain Insano rolling around up there. So I did talk with a Buddhist monk, and he talked about a stream, and he goes, picture the stream and picture leaves going through the stream, and the leaves are the thoughts. And he goes, and as you do this more often, the leaves will float through, and there'll be a gap in between the leaves. Focus on that. And that kind of freaked me out, because it was like serenity. It was like nothingness. But I've also learned to just meditate on Juan the gardener, who's, starts up his lawnmower in my backyard, and just to allow that to be, so I can learn to meditate no matter where I am. I've also lately been getting into some guided meditations on my phone, to where just sit there at night and put it on the little speaker and just kind of let my mind wander. And, I attempt to look at the positive, because I believe that everybody can meditate. It's just what we meditate on. And sometimes I used to have that negative thought and meditate on it the whole day and be pissed off, instead of changing that thought into something positive and meditate on that all day and stay in that good mood.
Please briefly describe step 12.
The best step. Love it. It's one of my peeves too, because I'll be at a meeting and somebody will go, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And it says the result of these steps, or the result, as some people would say. We get to carry this message. So I think that's where I go to carry the adequate presentation to the newcomer, and to give them the black writing on the white page. That way it doesn't become Marvin's Anonymous, it's Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous works for people. And to practice these principles in all our affairs, as I said before, we're always striving to be better. And I think in that morning meditation, and if I'm spiritually fit, my life has transformed into, I respond differently to life today. And carrying this message, Bill says it over and over, that nothing ensures permanent sobriety as much as one alcoholic working with another. And for me, I found that to be true, is when all else fails, man, get another alcoholic, whether they're a newcomer or have some time and get together and talk about the program and what's going on. And it finds that it takes myself out of myself and assists me. So love step 12.
Can you share with us a spiritual experience you have had as the result of these steps?
So many. The recent one, my father came up, and it was the first time in my recovery that I've got to spend 5 days with just me and my father. And me being present was just a cool thing. And, so much healing transpired in that time. And it was really a blessing. I get to do a book study down at Motherlode on Sunday nights. And I said, hey, you can go sit with Sis and I'll go to the book study. And he says, no, I'll go. And he goes to the book study, and it's really cool because in the beginning we go, is there any out-of-towners or anybody visiting? And he goes, my name is Marvin, and to watch the rest of the group kind of trip out. But as we did that book study, I see my dad sitting in the back of the room in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a smile on his face, just intrigued by what it is we were learning and talking and discussing. And he got to meet a lot of my support group that night, which meant a lot to me. But at the end of the meeting, he says, "Do you know that this stuff applies to people that aren't alcoholics?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you have another one of those books?" And I've got lots of those books. So I got to give him one of those books. And, the healing that has come out of working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, or having the program of Alcoholics Anonymous work in my life, is so hard to describe. So many beautiful things when you just be. And the healing that I never thought could happen. So that's one of my latest spiritual experiences that just knocked me on the floor. So, done.
What is the message of AA, and why is it important to carry this message?
It's contained between the front of the book and page 164. And, to show others precisely how the first 100 recovered is the main purpose of this book. In there it says, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." And it doesn't say paths. There's not a whole lot of different choices in it. And what I found is when we go through the book page by page and do what they did, we get what they got. In the front of the book, I think the prefaces or the forward to the first, second, out of 100 people that came to really AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses. Now let's say Bill embellished a little bit. Let's just take 35 people out of 100 that got sober. That's better than the national average of treatment. And one alcoholic reaching out to another. And I truly believe in the pickle concept. A pickle knows a pickle. So if we can show them how we have recovered, that program works every damn time. Done.
What are some of the principles you are practicing in your affairs today?
Honesty, open-minded, and willingness. I don't know where the other ones come on the wall. I think somebody picked those up from Hazleton or something like that and just decided to put them on AA rooms. But when you go back to spiritual experience in the back of the book, it says these are indispensable. And I think being as honest, and I'm not always honest. The truth is that everyone lies. But to the degree in which I do today is much better. I'm open to new possibilities and really working on prejudices when it's open. Because I'm a very prejudiced person, and that's old beliefs that I believe to be true. But I see them working in other people's lives. So being open just keeps me ignorant and willing to give that a shot. In the beginning, there was this old man that says, do this stuff for a year and you get a sponsor in a book. And if it doesn't work for you, I'll give you $1,000 to go out to the bar. And you know what? I did it for a year and was willing because my way wasn't working. And I couldn't have asked for a better gift.
Why is it important to put the welfare of others ahead of your own?
To get out of self. First of all, in working with the newcomers, sometimes you get away from what it felt like to be restless, irritable, discontented, and have that drug just pull you to it. And then to watch them with the gift of desperation do the work and watch them set themselves free is amazing. To watch families reunite, kids come back. Not that all that outside stuff, but to watch a human being find their own self-worth is a beautiful thing. Done.
How do you determine or gauge the quality of your sobriety in AA?
If I can sleep at night. Done.
Why do you think alcoholics relapse?
So many reasons, but it's in step one. I believe that allergy is so important to understand, and where I truly believe they relapse is, I don't believe it's I didn't hit a meeting today or I didn't talk to my sponsor. What it says is we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And did they get in touch with God that day? And attempt to stay in line with that. I think when we don't, and we don't stay humble, ego begins to rebuild itself rapidly. And when ego begins to rebuild, there's been times in my sobriety where there's untreated alcoholism, because I wasn't doing the work. So the half measures avail us nothing. I totally agree with that, and that it's being disciplined. There's a mentor of mine, and he goes, it's the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12, and this is the horse we must ride. And I totally agree with that. And, annually I'll go back, or biannually I'll go back and do the steps legitimately on paper. And it's just keeping that pipe between me and my higher power clean, and not getting clogged up.
Are you willing and able to sponsor other members currently?
Yes. Done.
Presently, what is the most important activity in your recovery program?
I'd say the thing that has helped me stay sober is prayer and meditation, and working with other alcoholics. I think that's a dual right there, is staying spiritually fit on a daily basis, no matter what, no matter where I'm at, taking that time out to acknowledge this higher power that has given me so much, and attempt to stay in line with that, and then to work with newcomers. It says it over and over in that book, but to work with newcomers is one of the highlights of my recovery. And not even newcomers. Sometimes I get the old guys who, want to go through the steps again, and that's a beautiful thing too, man. So,
would you please generally describe the purpose of the 12 traditions of AA?
It's for the group, to keep the group together. What they found in the beginning was there was people that were taking the program and working the program in different manners than the originals, and the groups were getting out of hand. I mean, there were some groups that were, drinking beer during the meetings, and some groups that were charging to do fifth steps and stuff like that. So I think it's the unity of the group, and so important, because I think that that you get a room full of alcoholics together, and we can take this thing and destroy it in a heartbeat. So that's what I look at with the 12 traditions.
Can you give us some examples of meeting etiquette?
Show up early. Get off your cell phone. Except for Jim. To pay attention to the speaker. For me, I bring a book to every meeting, because that way it allows me to reference the program of Alcoholics Anonymous than to give my opinion. To attempt to focus on the speaker, because we never know when that person's going to say that one thing that, could readjust our program. To reach out to the newcomer, to see if they have a book, to spend some time with them, is so important. I love, the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting. I love getting around other people in the meeting that have worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's the fellowship of the Spirit, instead of, just going to the meeting and sitting on your butt and not knowing what you're doing, and having spirit of the fellowship. Being courteous to other people, because everybody's in a different spot in their recovery, and it's remembering that. To take people aside and teach them rather than to chastise them at meetings, and to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we carried this message. So as much as possible, be right out of that damn book, and give hope. Not the war stories of your lawnmower, your divorce, and all this stuff that happened to you, but to give the newcomer hope that they too can do this program. Done.
What role models do you have in sobriety?
Shit. I have tons. The people that have gone before me, the newcomer that's jumping on this thing. So many. I'm so honored by the support group around me. It's amazing. And it says you do not want to miss watching a fellowship grow up around you. Not that I have to be the messiah of the group, but to be part of this thing that has a life force of its own, of people striving to be their best, striving to move forward, is one of the most beautiful things that I've encountered in my life. Lots of role models.
What advice do you have for newcomers in AA?
Do the steps or die. Done.
What advice do you have for old-timers in AA?
Do the steps or die. Acknowledge when you're dry. I watch a lot of people come in and they're dry as a popcorn fart, and they have thought that that's all they need to do. They've stayed clean for long enough, but I believe sobriety is a whole different animal. And I love the writing that Bill Wilson did on emotional sobriety at 21 years. And he was still suffering from, at times, depression and anxiety and things like that. And you know, it's to continue to do the work and remain humble, because a gift has been given to us.
Last question. Can you please describe what this experience was like?
Well, I'm talking into a rabbit, so it's a real... it's been cool. It's been cool. It's kind of awkward. I go, man, I'm going to be on a recording somewhere of these different things, and that's kind of cool. So someday I'll be able to look back and go, wow, man, I've grown. But it's been a good experience. It's a good group, and you know, it's always a pleasure to be part of Alcoholics Anonymous. So thank you.
Thank you, Marvin, so much for being willing to do this. I appreciate you very much. It was an excellent share.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do. From the old preamble, I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinion as of today and as of up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big Book. If you don't have a big book, it's time you bought one. Read it, study it, live with it, loan it, scatter it, and then learn from it what it means to be an AA. Let's conclude by holding hands in a circle and saying the Serenity Prayer.